I'm not sure how to start this video, so I'll just get to the meat of it. It's recently come to my attention that there has been some discourse between the fandom of the very well-known RPG Genshin Impact and the players of a, as of rating, very recently released game called Wuthering Waves, which I'll talk more about later on, specifically regarding the character designs for both games. On one side, you have people saying Genshin's character designs were better than Wuthering Waves', and on the other side, you had people saying the exact opposite. So, as someone who enjoys character design, it had me thinking, which side has the better argument here? Well, to be honest, I can't really answer that. Character designs, as with art, are largely subjective. One person might think it's great, while another person might not think it's great. But I think we still need to discuss this anyway. Now, I want to mention that even though I am and have been in the Genshin fandom for quite some time, I've been playing since version 1.1, so 3.5 years now, and this would by default skew my perspective just a bit, I still want to look at this discussion from as neutral a standpoint as possible. I've analyzed the character designs for both games, sorting out their strengths as well as their weaknesses in one convenient table that I set up while I was writing the script for this video. No, not that table, son of a— The character designs for both games have their pros and their cons, excelling in some aspects of character design while falling behind in others. I'll also be looking at the designs of each game individually before doing a bit of a side-by-side comparison, if you will. If you're new here and you want to see me tackle this apparently highly contentious topic, and also want to see more art-related videos and shenanigans from me, then make sure to like and subscribe and stick around to see just what I have to say on the matter. Also, we have spaghetti, but that's besides the point. But with all of that said, here we go! Let's start by taking a closer look at what even is going on here. Wuthering Waves, one of the topics of this video, is a very recently released role-playing game, and by recently I mean about 3 weeks ago as of writing the script, developed and published by Koto Games, which is also responsible for punishing Grey Raven for mobile devices and the PC. Because Wuthering Waves features an open world and multiple playable characters like its predecessor Genshin Impact, which was released by Hoyoverse in 2020, the former has been compared to the latter along with a few other titles. But where Wuthering Waves stands out is a unique combat system established with the intention of setting it apart from its predecessor. But that's not why we're here. Combat system and everything else aside, just about immediately upon Wuthering Waves' launch, people took to social media to compare the game's playable character designs to those of Genshin's. Multiple Twitter users immediately started dunking on either Genshin's character designs or Wuthering Waves' character designs, with some bringing in other games to back up their arguments. One user, for example, claimed that Wuthering Waves had dull color palettes, nearly identical designs, and same face syndrome, among a few other things. On the other hand, you had several users say Genshin's character designs were too bright and oversaturated, for instance. And it wasn't just on Twitter. There are several YouTube videos comparing the designs for the two games, along with discussions on places like Reddit. Now, I haven't played Wuthering Waves yet, but to just write it off as having mid-character designs without giving them a chance would just be adding fuel to the fire, let's be for real here. Wait, am I still doing this without even realizing it? I don't know, honestly. But anyway, enough of my rambling. Let's get into the character design analysis bit itself by first taking a look at Genshin's character designs, or more specifically, their playable character designs. One thing that immediately stands out with Genshin's character designs is that all of them are quite detailed. Very heavily detailed, even. Probably more than they need to be. Regardless of where you look, there are smaller details of some kind that you would probably miss at a first glance. I know I have with more than a few of the characters. For example, let's take a look at the character I'm drawing on screen right now. The one and only Furina Genshin Impact. Furina's outfit has multiple blue gem-like accessories shaped like water droplets, not too surprising given that her element is water, along with little tassels that hang from the end of the bow on her sash. You may also notice a series of shimmering, scale-like pieces on the back of her coat, and an emblem that can be found at the top of her top hat. A detail that can be easily overlooked if you don't think to look there. And that's not even getting into all of the other details. However, with all of the minute details and added accessories and whatnot, the designs can come off as overly detailed, which for anyone looking to draw them results in a lot, if not all of them being very hard to draw. It doesn't really show in the time-lapse, but I was fighting for my life with this drawing because of how many details there were. This can also result in a case of overcrowding or the design feeling cluttered, but even then, all of the added details are put together in a way where the elaborate outfits somehow work. Every component of a character's design when added up gives each of them a distinct shape language that makes them almost instantly recognizable, and would allow them to pass the silhouette test with flying colors. Going back to Farina for a moment, two elements of her design that make her stand out and give her a recognizable silhouette, at least in comparison to the rest of Genshin's cast, are the top hat tilted to the left side of her head, and the large fabric ornament she has on the back of her coat. Another character that I want to talk about is Yao Yao, who has two giant bells on the top of her head, along with the bow-like braid she wears. She also carries a basket on her back that's a little easier to identify if you don't look at her straight on. Another character, Kaya, has an absurdly large fur collar on his right shoulder, and he has a cape on his left side to balance that out. Other characters' silhouettes can be recognized by way of any scarves or capes they may have, along with the shape of their clothes or hair. Though, to be honest, the same could be said of any good character design. It's not just shape language and silhouettes that Genshin's designs excel at. Each character has a color scheme that reflects the element that they use, with several outliers of course, not including the protagonist. But the color schemes are usually diverse enough to make each character stand out from the next character in their element group. Take, for example, Hu Tao, whose element is pyro, or fire. She has a predominantly black and red color scheme, which makes her color palette very different from another pyro user, Yoimiya, whose color scheme is very heavy on reds and oranges. I also want to point out the differences in color palettes between two hydro or water characters, Nilou and Kokomi. Nilou's outfit boasts a paler blue color scheme in comparison to Kokomi, who has an array of darker and more vibrant blues in her design. Differences in hair color aside. I also want to expand on character motifs and themes for a moment. Every playable character has some sort of theme or motif tied to their design, though some are more subtle than others. Yunjin's design was heavily influenced by traditional Chinese opera clothing, although I don't remember if there was a specific regional genre of Chinese opera involved in her design. And you can especially see this with the hat that she wears. Kazuha's design borrows primarily from the Japanese maple, also known by its binomial name Acer palmatum, which is also the name of his constellation. Multiple maple leaves can be seen on his outfit, and his color scheme is reminiscent of certain cultivars of the Japanese maple. A far more subtle example of this is Amber. Even though her constellation is a rabbit, and her elemental skill involves throwing an exploding mannequin with rabbit ears, the only readily obvious part of her outfit that alludes to this motif is the large bow she wears on her head, which resembles rabbit ears. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention my homunculus chalk son Albedo at least once. While he is an alchemist, a lot of his imagery revolves around stars, several of which can be seen on his outfit. I mean, bro even has one at the base of his neck, which is a direct result of being created via alchemy. There's also a fairly decent lean towards floral motifs, but this isn't readily obvious unless you start spamming his alchemical flower-shaped elevator all over the map every 5 seconds. Which, not gonna lie, is a great way to pass the time. One more thing that I want to cover are the small details that tell you which region a certain character is from. Even if a character's design isn't exactly faithful to its regional influences 100% of the time, there are still hints that borrow from the locations that a character's region is based on. Some broader examples that come to mind are the flamboyant and elegant style of dress that you'll see with Fontaine's cast, with some designs resembling 18th century Western fashion, along with Inazuma's influences from Tokugawa-era Japan. At least that's what one source says. More character-specific examples include the buttons on Yanfei's collar and hat, which bear heavy resemblance to Chinese cash coins used from the 4th century BCE to the 20th century CE. Layla's hood, at least according to the game's wiki, bears some resemblance to the dupatta, a long shawl-like scarf traditionally worn by women in the Indian subcontinent, but also worn in many regional styles across South Asia. Now, for all the things that Genshin's character designs excel in, there is one thing when it comes to distinction that it falls behind on. Just about every character has a similar face shape, a fact that becomes especially worse when you put two characters with the same model side by side. In fairness, however, I would imagine a good part of that fault falls with the limited number of playable character models used for the game. But either way, as a result, Genshin's character designs suffer heavily from same face syndrome. There are characters who have different eye shapes, sure, and that does take some of the same faceness off just a bit, but it doesn't change the fact that there's no difference in face shape between one character who uses, let's say, a tall female model and another. And for all the good character designs that Genshin has produced over the years, I will admit that there have also been some designs that haven't quite hit the mark. A more recent example being Emily, an upcoming character who was announced a few weeks ago. Her design isn't trash by any means, but all I'm saying is it could be a lot better. And that's not taking into account all of the rumors that have been circulating in recent months regarding upcoming characters and designs for already playable characters in regards to regional and cultural accuracy. But that's a whole other discussion that I'm not sure I'm well equipped enough to cover, since I have no ties to any of the cultures in question. Okay, that's everything I want to talk about with the Genshin designs. Let's see how they compare with Wuthering Waves. Compared to Genshin's largely colorful and vibrant character designs, the character designs of Wuthering Waves are a lot more monochromatic, with black or white being the dominant color of a character's outfit. To the game's credit, the monochrome designs are well tailored to and reflect the game's post-apocalyptic setting, and it works very well for some of the characters. Where Genshin tends to fall behind on giving its characters different face shapes, Wuthering Waves excels in this area a fair bit more than its predecessor does. Some of the more obvious examples include Verina and Yuanwu, but when you look at the rest of the cast, you may notice that Danjin has a noticeably rounder and softer face than, let's say, Sanhua. Just as Genshin gives each character a color scheme that sets them apart from others, especially those who use the same element, Wuthering Waves excels at this in several aspects, at least in the color palette attribute/element department. Let's take a look at the two characters with the Havoc attribute, or the ability to annihilate matter. Danjin's black, red, and white color scheme paired with the blue gem she wears sets her apart from the game's other Havoc user, Taoche, who has a white and pink forward color palette. The Electro attribute, the ability to displace charges, has 3 characters associated with it, and all of them stand out from each other just going on color palettes alone. Whether that's Yinlin's black and red color scheme, or Kalkaro's black, white, and gray color scheme. Wait, hold up. Kalkaro? Kalsharo? Kalkaro? Help me. If we're looking at the whole of the spaghetti bowl, however, this is where the universal monochromatic palette works to the game's detriment. There's nothing wrong with having limited color palettes. In fact, it's something that I use for my own designs, and honestly, it's much better than having like 8 different hues vying for dominance. And it works very well for characters like Sanhua. Personally, I think the all-black getup really suits her, with her having a more reserved personality. The thing is, though, multiple characters have very similar color schemes, to the point where it can be difficult to distinguish one from the other. The most obvious comparison I can think of is Genshin and Baizha, who both have heavy usage of black and white in their designs, and who also have some shade of teal in the mix as well. Yangyang and Yuanwu also have the same black, blue, white color palette going on, to the point where I legit thought they were part of the same group when they apparently aren't. There are several ways where similar color schemes between different characters can work, like messing around with the shades of blue so that this way one character is more distinct than the other, but I'd be lying if I said I wasn't confused by the similar color palettes between characters. Speaking of simplicity, you can see from the get-go that the designs in Wuthering Waves are simpler than those of Genshin's. Even though simplicity can be a good thing, and not just as a matter of convenience, I can still see how the character designs in Wuthering Waves may come off as dull to some. It's also worth noting that several design elements are repeated for more than one character, whether that's the chest belt thingies that several characters have, or the flowing fabric garments on the lower halves of certain characters' outfits. This also brings me back to the topic of shape language. The aforementioned fabric garments and their resulting shapes can be seen on both Kalkaro and Jian, resulting in them having a similar shape language in the lower halves of their designs. And this especially isn't helped by the fact that they both have long hair, and the fact that they both wear more form-fitting garments on the upper halves of their bodies. Also, I want to mention that Kalkaro and Alto look like brothers because of their similar color schemes and hairstyles, even though they probably aren't. Again, I haven't played the game yet. Don't bully me, please! Going back to the topic of character designs conveying information about the character themselves, certain character designs in Wuthering Waves are better at conveying character information than others, at least at a first glance. Characters like Verina and Lingyang are great examples of this. In line with her being a botanist, you can see a number of floral and plant-related motifs in Verina's design, like the flower pin on her dress and the really long vine on her back. Lingyang's design revolves heavily around the lion dance, a traditional form of dance in Chinese culture and other Asian countries thought to bring good luck and fortune. Another, more subtle example of this is Encore, who has rounder hair tips meant to resemble sheep's wool, which along with the 2 plushies she carries goes well with her sheep motif. Now, even though they have their shortcomings, and Genshin's designs do as well, I don't dislike the character designs in Wuthering Waves. In fact, there are a lot of little things with each character's design that I enjoy, like the feathers in Yangyang's hair and the way Danjin's eyes and the stone she wears contrast with her mostly red hair and outfit. I also like the way that a lot of the character designs reflect the character's personality in some way, like how Taoche's design reflects her more laid-back personality. But wait, It would be unfair to compare a newly launched game to one that's been out for almost 4 years, wouldn't it? So let's take things one step further by leveling the playing field just a bit. In order to do this, I'm going to compare the playable characters that are currently in Wuthering Waves as of right now with the characters that were available in Genshin Impact upon its launch in 2020. I will be including Klee, as she was also released in version 1.0, even though she was not released immediately upon the game's launch. While both games have a decent amount of design diversity when looking just at its initial roster, I'm gonna have to give Genshin the advantage on this front once again, since the proficiency in shape language and silhouettes can still be seen even with a drastically limited cast in comparison to the... who knows how many characters we have now. I lost count at 65. The initial roster also still has the distinct color palettes that separate each character not just from their fellow element users, but also from the rest of the cast. One thing that both Genshin and Wuthering Waves have equal ground on in this context, and come to think of it, in general as well depending on which character you're looking at, are the obviousness of character themes. Some characters, like Klee, show their motifs more outwardly. In Klee's case, four-leaf clovers can be seen all over her outfit, from the sides of her boots to the front of her hat. Even her name is a direct lift of Klee, the German word for clover. Other characters, namely Venti, are a little more subtle with their themes. His associated element is wind, something that you may miss if not for the feathers hanging from his belt. Also attached to his hat is a flower called the Cecilia, which can only be found in one region on Genshin's map. In lore, the Cecilia grows only where there is harsh wind, and is said to be intangible like the heart of an unbound soul, which is an interesting nod to Venti's free-spirited personality. The range of designs with Genshin's initial roster is fairly limited in comparison to what would come later, but in all fairness, it was a new game at the time. It's for that reason that I am going to give Wuthering Waves the benefit of the doubt and a couple more years to see what else they come up with in regards to playable character designs. In fact, a couple of upcoming characters already show promise, namely Zhangli. Like, even if I don't end up playing Wuthering Waves, I may just draw her anyway at some point because... she's so pretty. So, who knows? Maybe with time we'll see even better character designs for Wuthering Waves than the ones we're seeing right now. But having taken everything into account, which game has the better character designs? Well, they both have their strengths and weaknesses for sure, but I did say I wanted to be as unbiased as possible, and honestly this really comes down to a matter of subjectivity at its core. So, I'll let you be the judge. But nevertheless, that is going to do it for this video. If you like this video, and again, you want to see more art-related videos and shenanigans from me, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. I usually post about drawing or what have you, but sometimes I dabble in other art-related things as well. If you want to support me further, please check out my other social media accounts as well as my Ko-fi and my Etsy shop, which are all in the description. And lastly, if you made it this far, leave a chair emoji in the comment section below. And remember to keep things civil in the comments, or I will put a whoopee cushion in your chair when you least expect it. And yeah, that's about everything. Thanks for watching.